This is going to be the video that covers the second part of nomenclature, which is substituents. So after you've determined what your parent chain is, next you need to identify and name the substituents. So here's how we name substituents. Again, it's based on number of carbons. And then this is the name. So you can see here the prefixes are the same. So 1 carbon is still meth prefix, 2 carbons is still eth prefix, 3 is still prop, but, pent, so on and so forth. So the prefix is still the same, the suffix is what changes. So for substituents, they have this YL suffix. So if you have a substituent with 1 carbon, it is a methyl group. A substituent with 2 carbons is an ethyl group. 3 carbons is a propyl group. 4 carbons is butyl, so on and so forth. So let's go back to this example here. So again, we determined that this was our parent chain in the last video. So here are our substituents. Again, these are the groups that are coming off the main chain. And now we want to name them. So let's start here. So this substituent has just 1 carbon. So this is a methyl group. This substituent also just has 1 carbon. So it's also a methyl group. This substituent here has 4 carbons. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that would be a butyl group. And this substituent here has 2 carbons. So we call this an ethyl group. What if we have rings? So sometimes the ring will be the parent chain and sometimes it's a substituent, and it depends on the number of carbons. So if we look at this example here, the parent is the cyclic group because it has more carbons than the substituent. So this is called propyl cyclohexane. So cyclohexane is my parent, propyl is my substituent. It has 3 carbons. If I look at this example here, though, here the substituent is the ring and the parent is this straight chain. And that's because the chain has 4 carbons and the cyclic group only has 3. So whatever has the most number of carbons, that will be your parent. And then the other thing will be your substituent. Sometimes we have complex substituents. So let's look at this molecule here. The main chain, we want to find that. That's going to be this right here. So that's your parent chain, which makes this a substituent. And this substituent here is not so easy to name, right? It doesn't just have, 3 carbons in a line. It looks quite a bit different than that, right? It has things coming off of it. It's just not a straight line. So when you do this, you have to try to name it. So what you do is you name and number the substituent side group. So let me show you what I mean. We have to number this, and we're going to look at the substituent and again, find the parent chain of the substituent. So here, that's these 4 carbons, right? And what you need to do is you need to number that. Carbon number 1 will always be the carbon attached to the parent chain. And then you just number the longest chain in the substituent from there. But it's important, again, you're 1, numbering the longest chain in the substituent, and 2, carbon 1 is the carbon attached to the main parent chain of the molecule. So now if I look at this group here is coming off of that substituent, right? Coming off the main chain of the substituent, and that's a methyl group. This part of the substituent, that's a butyl group. There's 4 carbons. So to name this side group or the substituent, I would call it 2-methyl butyl. That's the name of the whole substituent. 2-methyl, that is this group here. It's on carbon 2 of the side chain, and it's a methyl group. And butyl comes from these 4 carbons here. Now, here we're looking at how we're writing these. So let's talk a little bit about this at this point. Whenever you have a number, numbers and letters, you always put a dash between any number and letter. So number and letter. So here I have 2-methyl, so on. So there's a dash between the number and the letter. And then there's no space here. So you don't put spaces between the words at all. So this is all one word. Here's some more examples of some complex substituents. Here, this is a propyl group, right? I have 3 carbons, but if I have 3 carbons attached to a parent chain like this, I could name it 1-methyl ethyl, right? So here I have 1, 2. So that's where I get, sorry about that. That's where I get the ethyl from. And then there's a methyl group off that first carbon. So that's the 1-methyl. But IUPAC has another name for this, and that's isopropyl. So we would also call this isopropyl group. So again, I still have 3 carbons, but the parent chain is attached to the second carbon in the chain. Both of these names are equally valid, though isopropyl is definitely going to be the much more common name. If you have 4 carbons, if you just have a normal 4-carbon chain coming off of a parent chain, that would be a butyl group. If the 4-carbon chain is attached to the parent at the second carbon in the chain, we call that sec-butyl. This is an isobutyl group here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, isobutyl. It's 2-methylpropyl. And then tert-butyl looks like this. Again, you could use these names down here in parentheses, but they are definitely not anywhere near as common as sec-butyl, isobutyl, and tert-butyl. So you really should be using the more common ones. And that's what I will be using in the class. And most books and things like that will be using sec-butyl, isobutyl, not 1-methylpropyl or 2-methylpropyl. If you have 5 carbons, again, if it's in a normal chain, that's a pentyl group. But if it's attached like this, we call that isopentyl. And if it's attached like this, we call that neopentyl. So let's look here. We're going to find our main chain, and then we'll name the complex substituents. So here's my longest chain. So this is my parent chain here. So I have these substituents. This one here, I could do it as, let's see here. So I have, this would be carbon 1 and carbon 2. And I have a methyl group coming off the first carbon. So I could name this 1-methyl ethyl. But again, that's not the common name or the most commonly used name or preferred name. The preferred name would be isopropyl. If I look at this one down here, I could name it 1-methylpropyl, but the better, more common name is sec-butyl. So definitely make sure you can identify these more complex substituents.